Hi there, we are at CandyMachines.com today, and what we're going to do today is kind of do a complete run through of the menu and option settings. It'll be sort of like a video manual for the machine, and we're going to do it on the new 31-inch Make It Happen glow front. We have it as a flashing setting right now, just so you can see the intensity when that glow front is set to on. And this machine turns out really great. The extended capacity, if you can see how high that plexiglass is for a 31-inch machine, it's a fantastic capacity when you move to the plush items. It's got the rubber tips on. Moving forward, all of our machines will just come with rubber tips. If you don't want them, pull them off, but at least you'll have what you need on there. And those of you who are familiar with our machines, whether it be the Let It Happen, the Make It Happen, the 22-inch Mega Treasures, or the Mini, the keypad and the software navigation is pretty much the same. The software is a little bit different for the Mini, but by and large, it's basically the same. The navigation and the basic settings are going to be the same. There's also going to be some software features on this version that may not be on all machines as far as game modes and everything else. So if you've got an older version of software or not this particular version of software, it may not have some of these game modes. So just take note of that. It's basically, if you get your keypad out, and one of the first things you're going to do is the lower right hand corner is your mode button or your menu button. And if we go into there, your basic navigation of the menu, you've got your up and your down here. And most of your settings are going to be in the system settings. So we're going to start there and kind of walk through each of them. So basically, if you just highlight system setting and then you click enter, and you get all of your different settings, your core settings for the machine here, and we'll kind of go through each of those and explain what they do and give you kind of an overview. I know the manual it isn't always that wonderful, the written one, as far as describing what's in each of the settings. So just starting from scratch, I'm going to exit. So again, if we just click mode, and it gets us into the settings, and then we're going to start with system setting. So we're going to go down and click enter. The very first setting in there is coins per credit. Now this is pretty intuitive to use. If you just click enter, all you're going to do is navigate up and down. So if we want to be at $1, we're going to go to 4, and then we would just simply click exit. There is no save or additional step you have to do. You literally just put the value on what you need it to be at, and then you click exit. And then we've got a track mode. Most people are going to have this at the default. What a track mode is going to be is when that music comes on. It's sort of that attraction mode is what we call it. The music's going to come on and play on the game. A lot of locations you may have the music all the way down, so this may not even be a setting that you ever go into. But if you wanted to set that interval of when that music comes on, you can set that here. And again, you just set that value, and then you would click exit, and that saves the value in there. So that's what a track mode is. Alarm sound. Now, not all machines are going to have an alarm, but it's just the length of time that it plays that sound. So this software is somewhat universal for some of our machines. Not every machine's going to have an alarm. But this particular sound is if it airs out, if there's an error, it's going to throw like an alarm horn sound. So it's just, again, if you go in there, it's just the interval, the amount of time that sound is going to play. So again, this is probably a setting that you're not going to go into much, but that's what it is. Playtime out. this is when the credits go in and the game starts to play. The default is they play the game for 30 seconds, or they have 30 seconds to play the game. If 30 seconds goes by, the game will end, the clock will go down, it'll come back to the home position. So you can set this value here. Probably not something you're going to go into much, but again, we just want to explain all the different options on here. So we'll just leave it at 30 and we're going to click exit. Award credit. So how award credit works, and this will be different if you have a NIAX reader, you probably want to handle your bonuses through the NIAX. If you're running cash only, you can award a credit. If you go in there and you could say, well, every $5 we want to award in a credit, then what the machine's going to do, it's actually going to work on accumulation. And this is why you'll need to be careful if you're working with NIAX and doing bonus plays. So basically, when the machine's when it accumulates 5 credits, so if somebody comes and puts $2 in, and then the next person comes in and puts $3 in, it's going to award them a credit game. So as it accumulates, when it gets to that 5th credit, it'll award a credit. So that's generally how it's going to work. We do have some people using this, quite a few that we've heard about, so it may be something you want to use. Again, if you're using a NIAX reader, it's probably better to do the bonus system through there. But that's what award credit is. Average win ratio. Now, this is kind of the default setting. And if you're running off of a win ratio, and don't let this be confusing, 16 credits per game, that's 16 plays of the game. So if you're playing at $1 a game, it's after 16 dollars goes into the game, or 16 plays of the game is when it's going to set the game to basically put it in a win mode at that point. And again, not all machines will have all of these game modes, but if yours has it and you're running off a average win ratio, then this is what you'll want to do. If we want it to win 1 in every 4, then we're going to set it at 4. I know it's kind of confusing because it says credits prize, but it's actually 4 plays. So we're going to set that at 4, and on the 4th win, it should be set on a win mode, basically. The other thing that's important for this, and we're going to skip down just a little bit, because when you're on an average win ratio, and again, it's not going to be the same for every software mode, software version out there, and not all cranes are going to have everything you see here. But this one, this software, basically has just about everything on it, so it'll cover every menu, every option for all the different machines or software versions that are out there. But if you're on a average win ratio, it only works if your game mode is set to normal. Okay? If it's on random option 1 or random option 2, it does not look at win ratio at all. It doesn't even look at that setting. So first thing you need to do is make sure your game mode is in normal if you're working off an average win ratio. So we're going to be on normal mode. And then our average win ratio is set to 4. And just to be kind of all-inclusive on this, the other setting that works in conjunction with this would be the claw strengths. So I'm going to skip out a little bit. So I'm going to click exit twice and get back to my main menu. And I'm going to go to gantry test. Now in gantry test, you have to test high, mid, and low. And right now, it's at an 81, and you'll see every 5 seconds on it when it's testing that mode, it's going to clamp down with that strength. Now 81's a fairly high strength. Typically, if we set these, we're going to be at a high of 75, a mid of about 55, and a low of about 15. So how this works and why this is important with average win ratio is how it's going to work with what we just set up when we did a 1 in 4 ratio. So games 1 through 3, the game is going to play. It'll go down and grab at the high strength. 1 second later, it's going to transition over to the mid strength. And the mid strength is basically controlling the voltage that goes to that coil and how strong it grabs. 50 is still pretty firm, so if it grabs it at an 80 or a 75 and then transitions to a 50, it's probably still going to maintain that grip on there. The important thing is, on an average win ratio, is then once it gets up to the top, it's going to transition to the low power. And low is very low. It's very low voltage, and you can see the difference there on the intensity of the voltage going to that clock. So essentially what's going to happen is that item is going to drop out on games 1 through 3. When it gets to that 4th, or whatever you have your win ratio set to, at that point, it's going to grab it high, transition to mid, but it's never going to go to low. And it's going to maintain on that setting until the prize sensor tells us the game that it's won a prize. So when you're on an average win ratio, again, just to do a quick overview on that, you'll set your average win ratio. You just set that value at the number of games, how often you want it to be go on a win mode. So in this particular instance, we have it at 4, so we're at a 1 in 4 ratio on this. The next thing we're going to do is confirm that we are on game mode normal, if in fact your software has game modes. Not every software version is going to have a game mode. And then the third setting you'll want to work, that'll work in conjunction with that, is going to be the claw strings. So that's average win ratio as a whole and how it works. So we'll move on to the next setting. LCD screen adjustment, pretty self-explanatory. The only thing you got to be careful about, and we've had a couple people do this, is they accidentally bleach it all the way out to basically nothing, to where you can't see it. And you don't want to do that, so just be careful. If you go too high, it rolls over to 0. So if you ever get an LCD brightness settings and it bleaches it out, just make sure you keep rolling through the, just continue to click up until you see the screen again. But you don't want to go too high and bleach it all the way out. But all it is adjusting the brightness and the intensity of the screen. It's pretty self-explanatory there. Vending option. Okay, so if you have vending option enabled, and right now it's disabled, but if you have it enabled, it does not look at your average win ratio setting. Vending mode is essentially if you're on a win every time mode, or if you need the game to be the exact same claw strength for every play. So if we were to enable that, all we do is enable and we click exit. Again, there's no save there. And just like average win ratio, there are a few other settings that work in conjunction with this. So if we go down 1 to grab times, and what grab times is, it only works when vending mode is enabled, first of all. So that's important to take note of. But it's the number of attempts you want them to have. So if you set it at 5, it's going to give them up to 5 tries. If they win on the second try, it'll cut them off, but it'll give them up to 5 chances at winning the prize. So if you just want it to be kind of a skill setting, then what you would do is just give them 1 try. Everyone has the exact same claw strength for every play, and it's only going to look at your high claw strength. So that's the other important factor to know with you when you got vending mode. So vending mode enabled, it does not look at average win ratio. It looks at grab times, and it looks at high claw strength. And again, if we wanted to give them 5 tries, then we would go there. Then we would go back to our gantry test, and we would set our high power right now is 81, which is pretty high. And then once they put in a credit and they play the game, they would get up to 5 tries with that setting there. So that's what vending mode is. And again, when it's enabled, it does not look at average win ratio at all. So, and again, it does need to be on normal mode too. So you need to be on normal mode if you have that option. And then you can either disable or enable a vending option. So we'll go back into there and continue our way down the menu. So that's vending option. And again, that works in conjunction with grab times and the high claw strength. Claw down position. Leave this at 100. There's really not too many reasons why you'd need to change this. If you wanted to, you could, but it's basically going to be how far the string goes down. But there's no real reason to have to change that from the factory default. That's really where it should be. Air catch mode. Now we get some questions about this from time to time. Air catch mode works off the button. So you control when the claw closes. So if you have air catch mode enabled, instead of just playing the game, pushing the button, it goes down to the bottom and then grabs. There's a secondary action by the user that they push the button to grab. So if you're going into a more of a skill mode, that's something you may want to introduce there. But that's what air catch mode is. You control when the claw closes. And you control that by clicking the button. So by default, it's going to be disabled if you have that option. But you're welcome to enable that. Prize shoot position. This happens from time to time. Now, this will be updated in the future. I know it's kind of backwards right now. But basically, if you get to where you're, and let's just change this to anterior. I know anterior means front, but you get to where your claw is in the wrong home position. Okay? And sometimes with some of our machines, like the Mega Treasure, for example, it drops the prize in the rear of the machine, not the front. So it's just the home position of the gantry. So if you go and for some reason it's not in the home position, it's the opposite of what it should be, then what you would want to do is you go into your setting, system setting, and you simply go prize shoot position, and you put that the opposite value of what it is. And this we're going to say left rear. I know that's backwards. It will be updated in the future. But you can see now the home position comes to the front. So that's what claw shoot position is. So let's continue down. We did LED state. Again, it's not going to be every machine, but if there is some control on, like the let it happen, the make it happen. Like for example, we have this at a flashing mode right now. We could just set it to a static. So all that's going to do is change the LED lighting settings. On the let it happen, for example, it's going to change the color of the corner lights. And you'll just navigate through those just by clicking up and down until you get to the one you want, and then you just leave it there. Not all machines are going to have LED control. Some of them do, some of them don't. Like with Mini, for example, the Mini Crane does not have LED control. Game mode. And this is important. We touched on it a little bit with the average prize ratio, but game mode, by default, you're probably going to be on normal. And so by default, you're probably going to be on normal. If you have this on random mode 1 or random mode 2, then it does not look at average win ratio. These two settings, and we'll just skip out of here for a second, they look at winning percentage. And right now you click in there and it's a 15%. Basically, what it's going to do is calculate random winners based off your percentage value. It completely omits average win ratio, so it doesn't matter what your win ratio is set at when you're on a game mode of random mode 2 or random mode 1. So you've got random mode 1 and random mode 2, both of which work with winning percentage. And both of them completely omit the average win ratio, so it doesn't even look at the win ratio setting. So for simplicity's sake, what we're going to do is, if we go into winning percentage and we have it set at 10%. So what the game's going to do is it's going to calculate winners based on your winning percentage of 10% over the next 100 plays. Now, if we're on a average win mode, I'm sorry, not an average win mode, but a random mode number 1, when it gets to a winner block based off that random calculation, it's going to move to the next block, whether that be a win or lose, whether it detects a winner through the price sensor or not. It'll just move to the next block no matter what. Now, if you're on option number 2, what it's going to do is when it gets to a winner block, it's going to wait to get feedback from the machine that a prize has been won before it moves to the next winner block or loser block, whatever the next block may be. If you're on a 10% and you're 1 in 10 out of 100, the chances of 2 winner blocks being next to each other it can happen, but it's not all that likely. But that's how random mode works. Basically, one of them is going to wait for feedback from the prize sensor and continue in a win mode until it sees that a prize has been won. The other is going to continue based on the next random win or lose selection that it calculated. Now, the main thing to look at here is it does look at all 3 clause strings just like average win ratio does. So it's going to go down, pick it up at a high, move to mid, and then go to low. When it's on a win, or it thinks when it's on a win mode, or winner block as we'll call them, it's going to go grab it on high and go to medium and maintain on medium. So basically the prize is won at that point. So that's what game mode and winning percentage are. Now, a couple other settings we'll look at here. Input output test. We'll just go over this quickly. This really probably deserves a whole video. But you've got test inputs, test outputs. So to visually think about this, inputs are going to be buttons, switches, stuff like that. Outputs are going to be motors. Just visually put it in perspective for you. So if you're testing inputs, and we'll do a quick example here. And this is a wonderful diagnostics tool. So if we're going to test our input on our button, so you can see when I press the button, the opposite state occurs on number 15. And that tells us that the machine is receiving input from that button. So if we were troubleshooting and we're saying, is my button working? We simply go in there and test it. It's as simple as that. A very useful tool, especially if you're checking switches in the gantries, joysticks, buttons, anything like that that's going to be on the input side. Now if we go to output, so for example, like a motor. So output works a little differently because we're going to control it. But if we go to, I'm going off memory here, but 16, and you can see it went backwards. So 16 is our backwards motor. And you can see just by simply clicking enter, So I'm doing a diagnosis on my machine, and I want to test whether the output is working on the backwards motor. I go to 16, press enter, and the machine should move back. The gantry should move back. If I want to bring it back home, it comes forward. Very useful tool in the diagnosis. Again, we'll probably make a whole video on it's just for this, but that's a quick overview of what input output is. Test audio. Again, you're just testing the different audio. It's pretty intuitive to use, but we'll do a whole video on input output that goes into a little more detail. Gantry test. We went into this. The most important things in here that you're going to see. You can test the gantry movement, but high power, low power, mid power, or high power, mid power, low power. Basically controlling the voltage that goes to your claw from your coil. You've got this particular claw. We've got a 48-volt coil. It's going to test it every 5 seconds, and you visually can see the difference and hear the strength on those as you go into each of them. And you see low, how weak that is on low. That is gantry test. System info. We'll probably do a video here. The most important thing in here is probably going to be game audits. This has been updated, and before you could not easily clear these. Now we've made it so you can clear them easily, but it is password protected. So that way, if you've got other people operating or servicing your machines and handling money, you still have a protected way to audit the game plays. Most people will just have them take a picture of that, send it back to them, and that should match the money coming back and the prizes that went out of the machine. Basically what we're counting here are the coins in. This counts in quarters. So this game is at 29 quarters in it, or coins, and it's paid out 5 prizes in that 29. If you wanted to clear the audits, you'd put your password in here, you'd clear. If you haven't changed your password, it's just going to be all zeros. Now the data has been cleared, and you can see the audits are at 0. Again, this updated version of it is not going to be on every machine. The older software versions, it was more of a non-resettable, and this is kind of non-resettable because you are password protected, so you're protected in the way that if you have somebody else servicing your machines, but it does enable you as an operator and owner to clear those out pretty easily as well. Some people just take a picture every time they go in there, and that's their new 0 value. Other people like to clear it all zeros before they leave the location. But that is a sort of a topical overview of some of the most up-to-date software that's in these machines. And it's not going to be all machines, but again, this is kind of one of our test beta versions, so it really has all of the different features in there. The Mini will be slightly different, but the core settings in the Mini are going to be the same, the most important ones. How to set up the cost per play, how to set your ratios, how to set your game modes, how to go on a vending mode. All of that is going to be the same. Testing your claw strengths, input, output. So that's kind of a topical overview. Hopefully that helps some people out there. We understand that the written catalog isn't the most wonderful thing in the world, but we try and make videos and make it visual for everyone anyways. That's our goal, and we'll try to continue to update these as the software may change. Again, it may not apply to your machine. It's just if you have a different software version, for whatever reason, you may not have all of these settings on there, but the ones that are on your software version, those that pertain to your particular machine, that's kind of an overview of what you would do to set that up. Thanks. Have a great day.